Hello everyone, welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's having a fantastic day. I hope that everyone has had a lovely Saturday and a lovely weekend thus far. I hope that you, your family, and your friends are safe. And if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There's a ton of stuff happening throughout the world. There's a lot of stuff regarding war and conflict, famine. We're seeing protests because of things that are affected by climate change, because things like natural resources, famine and drought especially, are impacting a lot of places throughout the globe. So luckily you guys have created an awesome community here that allows us to be the news that gives back. And what does that mean? Well, the news that gives back means that we do everything for fundraising and charity. We're never doing super chats on this channel. We are never at any point going to be pushing merchandising. The reason why is because everything we want to do nothing but fundraisers. We want to help people throughout the world with the issues that they are facing, whether that is through because their country is at war, or there's a conflict, there's terrorism, because there's obviously a lot of different issues happening. So we want to get back directly to the news stories that we are delivering on, and luckily you guys have made it capable of us doing that. If you check out the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different organizations and charities listed down there, and all of those have 80% or more of their donations actually go directly to helping people. At some point we'd love to be able to actually put fundraisers on the stream. We have a lot of growth to do until then, and you guys have been awesome at supporting us throughout this endeavor and continuing to support not just us but of course those organizations. So thank you very much for doing that. We can't thank you possibly enough for that. And also, if you have more organizations, please let a staff member know. Our links for our website and our Discord is in the description. You can go down there, you can check out our Discord, but let a staff member know on there. Shoot us a link, shoot us a short summary of what that organization does, and we'll start the vetting process. That way, hopefully, we can put it onto the streams, onto our Discord, and onto our website, so we can continue to raise more money for people throughout the world. And remember, if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's fine. Help us continue to grow by giving us a like and subscribe and letting your friends know about us. Doing that, it really helps us continue to grow as a community. It continues to help us, bring more people here. Ultimately, the more people that watch our stream, the more people that are here to enjoy how we're delivering the news, the more of an impact we will have overall as a community on the different situations throughout the globe. Once again, thank you very much for so far supporting us and these organizations with this endeavor, and hopefully we continue to see some amazing things happen in the future. But with that, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start jumping into the actual news. Now, if I come across something that raises, some questions for you, a lot of these topics tend to be very, very in general, they're pretty complicated. A lot of geopolitical situations. And I do apologize if you're hearing a bunch of noises in the background. It has decided that someone near us would like to blow stuff up, so they're shooting off a bunch of fireworks. Can't blame them. Blowing stuff up is really cool, but it is kind of annoying for the stream. But, so just bear with us through that. But if you do have a question or a comment, please feel free to say so. If you go and you ask Riley, who's one of our moderators, who is on the stream, Riley will actually send that question. They'll actually show me that question, and I can answer that to best of my ability, and hopefully I'll be able to answer that question with some meaning in some meaningful way to try and help you understand the kind of situations that we're talking about, because these things do tend to get kind of messy, and there is a lot of questions that get raised all the time regarding the different situations throughout the world. But without further ado, like I said, we're going to jump right into it, starting with, of course, our special report here in Ukraine. The first thing we start off with is here in Kyiv, where we have an update regarding child casualties. Now, child casualties are pretty terrible. It's a lot of pretty bad stuff when it comes to this, and a lot of children are affected by the war. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 361 Ukrainian children have died, 702 children have been injured. Most victims among children are from the Donetsk region. That's coming from the Prosecutor General's office, who runs the investigations throughout the country, including those going on in Irpin, Bucha, Hostomel, Borodyanka, places like that, as well as just all of the general situations that are the ones that have the International Criminal Court lawyers for Ukraine, the ones that understand international law, and those are where those statistics are coming from. President Zelensky himself actually made another statement, and we learned today from him about 7.5 million children were affected by the Russian military aggression in Ukraine. Among their urgent needs are rehabilitation, prosthetics, and social and psychological rehabilitation. Now, obviously, most children that he's talking about, they aren't going to need that medical treatment regarding physical wounds. However, 2/3 of Ukrainian children have had to flee the country. Many of them have been in areas such as Bucha, Irpin, Hostomel. Pretty much every child in Ukraine has been affected by this war, and they will need to be treated for pretty much the rest of their lives for the things that they have had to bear witness to. This is a war that impacts generations of people. It will impact generations. This is something that this war has completely destroyed relations with Russia for the foreseeable future. The political ties may change. There may be a time where Russia and Ukraine get along in the world once again, but that will be for a very, very long time. And even then, there will be animosity between them, as these kids who grew up in this war grow up and become politicians and leaders in their communities, in their country, as they grow up and they work in the military, as they grow up and they are teaching, and as they're raising families of their own. There will always be that worry. There will always be that connection. And there will always be trauma, mental trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and stuff that they will be afflicted with for the duration of their entire lives. As we continue on over here, we actually have a little bit of cool things coming out of Kharkiv. Usually when it comes to the stream, what we see in Kharkiv is more and more and more shelling. However, today it's been pretty active when it comes to the Ukrainian Air Force. We see here, end support is en route. Here's the Ukrainian air power is really lifted to the skies today. It seems that the conditions for flight have been a little bit better today. There has been some weather that has been pretty much ravaging most of Europe right now. When it comes to a lot of rain and stuff. In fact, torrential rains flooded out Moscow and many other areas, including areas in southern Ukraine. So it seems today that's been a little bit brighter, and so go ahead and check this out. So it's always nice to see that. As we continue to move down and we start to get into the Donbass, which is really the meat and potatoes of the war. The Donbass is really where this whole war is happening right now. You get those long-range ballistic missile launches that are striking deeper into Ukraine, and hypersonic missile launches that strike deeper into Ukraine. But really, when the war is taking place here, really in kind of the southern Kharkiv Oblast, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. And so we jump over here and we get, of course, our daily update regarding Donetsk. This is 24 hours late, essentially, when it comes to these updates. So just bear with that. Most official statements have a delay from anywhere from 12 to about 72 hours. It depends on the event. And this one comes every day from Pavlo Korolenko, who's the head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration. He says, quote, "The Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on August 5th. 5 people were killed and 14 citizens were injured." But it seems that as an offensive has started to take place here in the areas near Bakhmut, Soledar, and Toretsk, there has been some substantial pressure on Ukrainian forces. What we have started to see is Ukrainian forces preparing for the possibility of being overrun as large concentrations and as Russian troops from their reserves are pushing into this area and concentrating themselves in Bakhmut and throwing themselves into this offensive. While Ukrainian forces have been able to so far repel any Russian forces, this much larger offensive, what we can kind of gather and what we're kind of seeing here on the front lines is those offensives that were repelled were probing. Whenever you see this quite often, I think if anyone has ever seen the movie of We Were Soldiers, the actual event of the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley in Vietnam in 1965 is a perfect example of this, where what you do is you actually send smaller forces of troops and they conduct minor offensives at different points in the line, and what you're doing is you're probing your opponent your opposition force to see where are they weakest, where are they strongest, and you're trying to find a gap in order to exploit their lines and conduct things like encirclement movements, flanking maneuvers, stuff like that. That's going to make it very difficult for them to actually maintain their line as a whole. And this allows them to easily become overrun, and it's kind of a game of chess. You're countering your opponent's move, and you're trying to think 2 moves ahead, which is why chess is probably one of the greatest strategy games ever made. But that is what we saw in Bakhmut when those offensives were being repelled. Now that the main offensive has begun, the Ukrainians understand this, and they're looking at blowing bridges, which is what we see here today. It seems that much like the actual events, it seems that this one was a bridge too far for the Russians, as this one has already been destroyed. And they are completely destroying these bridges to ensure that the Russians have no crossing points and to limit or to at least slow them down. Something like this will be very easy to pontoon across. It will be very easy for the Russians to pontoon across. It's not like the Dnipro River, where the Dnipro River is too fast for them to actually pontoon and too large for them to make a pontoon bridge, so they actually have to use a ferry. No, this one's going to be easier for them to pontoon across. Just bring in a corps of engineers. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. But we're going to start seeing more of that. All this does is slows down the Russians, and momentum is very significant. And if you can slow them down enough to where they lose that momentum, you lose the initiative in your offensive, and that allows your opponent to really get the upper hand. Once again, a good reference for losing an initiative is the Black Hawk Down incident, Battle of Mogadishu, 1993. Black Hawk was shot down, and that ended up with them now becoming embattled. An operation that was supposed to last 30 minutes ended up lasting almost 2 complete days. So, as we continue moving forward, Makivka has some pretty interesting developments. Makivka, apparently, it looks like another Russian ammunition depot has been destroyed. HIMARS precision strikes, or Mars 2 precision strikes, as we can't just all label it HIMARS now. They are doing quite a number on the Russian logistical systems. Russian logistics, I mean, they are a large invasion force. You're talking about nearly 200,000 troops. Obviously, that's been whittled down a little bit. I wouldn't say that the casualty numbers that the Ukrainian forces are saying that they have inflicted on the Russians are accurate. That is probably very much inflated, but that is very common in a war, is to see those numbers inflated. Because if the Ukrainian numbers were correct, the war would be over. You can about guesstimate that for every death, and they're recording over 41,000 Russian killed in action at this point. For every death, you're also taking on anywhere from 2 to 3 troops that have been wounded in action, and therefore are now out of action. Also additional casualties. So the war would have been over by now. That's about, at the most, about 120,000 wounded and 41,000. Yeah. So that's 160,000 out of a 200,000 troop invasion force. The war's over. So, but what you do see is them hitting the logistical capabilities. Now, what they're actually destroying is nothing more than a fraction. It's a very, very small percentage. I wouldn't even see a whole percent. It's maybe like 0.001% of Russian stockpiles whenever they destroy an ammunition depot. That's not the point of destroying it. You're not trying to just destroy all of their ammo. Once again, I apologize for all of the explosions. Don't worry, you'll be hearing some more yourselves. Luckily, these are just fireworks and not an ammunition depot. But what you're doing is you're elongating their supply lines. The Russians had very strenuous supply lines to begin with. They did not have the number of logistical vehicles to actually support their invasion force, roughly about 15 BTGs, battalion tactical groups. They only had enough for about 10 to 12 of them. They only had about 2/3 of the vehicles they actually needed to supply this invasion force. And so they've built different points along the route. When you're talking about ammunition depots, the way to really think about it is it's multiple depots, all to support one group. So this Makivka, this ammunition depot here, in this general vicinity, probably has a truck that runs all the way from here, and I'd say probably to Shakhtarsk, which we've seen used quite extensively by the Russian forces. There's probably another ammunition depot here, right? It's perfect MSR for it. They can, and all trucks do all day long is they run from the front lines to Donetsk, and they probably run back and forth from a place in Donetsk to the front lines. And then from Donetsk, there's another set of trucks that runs between Donetsk and Makivka. And then another set of trucks that runs from Makivka to Shakhtarsk, and another set of trucks that runs from there to probably like Krasnali or wherever, probably maybe even back into Russia. And so what this does, Marinivka is probably a better crossing point, but all this does is each of these vehicles, each of these points, it takes time to onload and offload the ammunition, obviously. But what it means is that these trucks can make a lot more trucks can make a trip between Shakhtarsk and Makivka, right, than it would take to make a trip from Shakhtarsk to the front lines. So now these trucks can make, 2 trips. They can make 2 trips between Shakhtarsk and Makivka, and these trucks can make 2 trips between Makivka and the front lines, right? So every time you do that, every time you destroy an ammunition depot, you're elongating their supply lines. This means these trucks have to burn more fuel, make less trips, less often. They're more prone to breaking down. They're more prone to attack. And they are able to bring less supplies to the front lines. It's slowing down of their logistical. And the more and more you do this, the more and more ammunition depots you destroy, the longer and longer this supply line gets until you're getting 1 trip every 2 days. And that really grinds an offensive to a halt. You cannot, these tanks, to give you a comparison, the M1 Abrams tank alone takes 10 gallons of fuel just to start the engines. Right? Now, the Russians are different, but to give you a general idea of how much fuel these things need, 10 gallons of fuel just to start an M1 Abrams tank's engine. And in a BTG, you have a lot more tanks. Russians don't have light infantry units. They only carry mechanized and motorized units, meaning they're burning through a ton of fuel whenever they're operating, wherever they're at. But anyway, the Ukrainian forces have destroyed another ammunition depot here in Makivka, and we do have the video footage coming from that. So, another ammunition depot has been destroyed, and Russian logistics have been degraded quite further now once again. And it's a very busy day when it comes to destroying Russian logistics, or at least it was yesterday. This is coming from Sergei Bratchuk, who's the spokesman of the Odessa Regional Military Administration, and he has stated, quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed 7 Russian ammunition depots and 2 enemy military bases in the Zaporizhia, the Kherson, and the Donetsk regions on August the 5th. Why is someone from Odessa saying this? Well, there's a lot of military operations that are probably run out of Odessa, especially things like HIMARS, which Odessa has relative safety. I say relative safety. The Russians try and hit it with missile strikes all the time. But there is quite a bit of activity that can be run out of Odessa. It's not immediately... it's close enough to the front lines to make a difference. It's not immediately at risk of an invasion by ground forces. Really, all they got to worry about is some missile systems that are coming in. But the Russians have to worry about it a lot more. It's a lot easier to track old Soviet equipment than it really is any HIMARS systems. Erev says, it looks like a mushroom. Big explosions look like mushrooms. They get big enough, they look like a mushroom. So it's a big boy. It's a very, very big boy. A big boom. As we continue down here, once again, Ukrainian birds of prey, Su-25 frogfoots were spotted heading en route to attack at Russian positions along the front lines today. Once again, like I said, it seems to have been a really good day for the Ukrainian Air Force. And more successful strikes once again. Another update regarding the activities from August the 5th, which was yesterday. Once again, these statements usually are delayed pretty well, and that's for operational security purposes. Quote, the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed 2 Russian 152mm self-propelled howitzers, the 2S-19 Mista-S, an artillery unit, a military radar system, and an enemy ground command vehicle in the south of Ukraine on August the 5th. Let me jump back over here a little bit, and there's apparently being an ad hoc prison being built inside of the Philharmonic Theater of Mariupol. Supposedly they're going to perform trials of the POWs there. And just take a look. Jump down over here. We're seeing a lot of activity when it comes to Russian equipment moving to the front lines. And here we see air defense systems are en route to the front as well. These were located here in Priazovsky, which is in the Zaporizhia Oblast. It's on occupied territory. Why would they move this much stuff? Well, it's not so much the Air Force at this point. It's more the HIMARS. These air defense systems are really built to shoot down both aircraft and incoming missiles. The HIMARS systems have eluded Russian radar quite easily, and by the time that it's really detected and identified, it's a little too late to launch and intercept. So they're bringing in more and more air defense systems to try and limit these strikes, and probably going to be placing them around ammunition depots and logistical command centers in order to try and give the best chance the Russians can to intercept these HIMARS systems, which are doing a big number on their ability to continue to wage this war. And we go ahead and see that one here.
Какая-то антенна, блядь, нет. 8, там 8, 16 штук, да. Остаток то из них,
However, once again, if you don't know, if you can't identify it fast enough to shoot it down, you're not going to be doing too good of a job intercepting it. So the Russians, I don't think quantity over quality is really the way to go about fighting this war at this point, and the Russians probably should have learned that a long time ago, but they're going to try and do their best, I guess, at this point. Now, there's been a lot of talk regarding Anahadar lately, and we haven't discussed it here yet because it's a little confusing, and I think I finally have figured out why, and it's even confusing for us. So what's been happening is reportedly there was a strike on the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is here in Anahadar. If you remember, very early in the war, Hadar was captured by the Russian Federation, and there was a huge battle that took place here just on the outskirts of the compound facility that targeted an administration building that was on fire, all of which was captured on CCTV camera. Then the Anahadar nuclear facility went dark. The International Atomic Energy Administration actually made a big fuss about it, and reportedly then able to actually get access to Anahadar's nuclear facility, make sure it was running, and all the safety measures were still in check. A few days ago, so I should backtrack even more. Several weeks ago, we heard that the Russians were setting up artillery positions inside the Anahadar nuclear compound from somebody inside of Anahadar in order to shield themselves from military strikes. It was not but a few days later that kamikaze drones, most likely Switchblades, actually ended up impacting several of these facilities, including a camp here, that ended up killing several Russian troops and setting some stuff on fire. That was heavily reported by RIA Novosti, who is a Russian state-run media channel. A few days ago, it appears that there was some shelling at the Anahadar nuclear facility. The Ukrainians are claiming that it was the Russians who shelled it because there was severe damage that was done to their power grid that could have put the nuclear facility into a blackout, as well as some including some pipelines as well, that was also damaged or destroyed. The Russians are claiming the Ukrainians did it. The Ukrainians are claiming that the Russians have done it. There are some very confusing statements made by Dmytro Kuleba, who's the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine, stated that the Russians had actually taken it on August the 5th, which we do not believe that is true, considering we watched them take it very much earlier on in the war. So, this leads us to today's story, which is the fact that we're actually going to jump down here. So, this is the 10th Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, and this is coming from Russia at the United Nations. Secretary of State for the United States, Anthony Blinken, accused the Russian forces of using the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as a military base. We strongly reject such allegations. Actions of our military in no way undermine Ukraine's nuclear security or impede routine operation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. That seems to be false, because today video footage came out from a drone over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that shows Russian forces using it as a base, and we do have that drone footage for you today. This violates a lot of things. A lot of treaties, a lot of work by the UN, a lot of work by NATO, a lot of work by the Russians. It undermines a lot of things. But that is where we're at on this day. It was too confusing to really accurately report, but this is from Insider. This is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant being used as a military base by the Russian Federation.
Источники «Инсайдер» сообщают о подозрительной активности на Запорожской АЭС, оккупированной российскими военными. 2 августа на территорию АЭС прибыла колонна военных грузовиков. Они остановились между первым и вторым энергоблоками, а потом по одной машине начали заезжать на территорию машинного зала первого энергоблока через грузовые ворота. По данным этого источника, военные заминировали машинный зал. Другой источник «Инсайдер» сообщает, что на АЭС находится около 500 российских солдат и военная техника, в том числе БТР, зенитные установки и техника для радиохимической разведки. Он сообщает о том, что российские военные заминировали территорию АЭС, а мины и боекомплект российские военные хранят в непосредственной близости от энергоблоков под эстакадами.
So we've heard about it several weeks ago. Now we get to see the footage to prove it. The Russians are using the nuclear power plant as a military base. Why? Because striking a nuclear power plant, this one being the largest in Europe, they're using it as a shield. They know that Ukraine can't really target the facility because targeting a nuclear facility is a huge war crime. the first time that we had reported the Russian troops around the Zaporizhzhia power plant was on 6/22, so June 22nd. It was much earlier in the war that they had taken it. But I digress. They're using it as a shield. They know if Ukrainian forces try to hit the nuclear power plant, using it as a power plant or as a military base is a war crime. Secondly, it's also striking at it is a war crime, and they know that Ukraine is likely not to strike at the power plant because of the danger it poses. Because Ukraine knows better than anybody what happens when a nuclear catastrophe occurs at a power plant. Because Ukraine is home to Chernobyl, which that reactor, we all know the Chernobyl incident. And so that is the game that's being played right now. The Russians basically have a big sign that says you can't shoot at us because we're here, and the Ukraine is frustrated that they can't shoot at them because they are there, and somebody has shot something that has impacted the nuclear facility, and both sides are blaming each other. So, but that's probably going to be a pretty big deal on the international stage for some time if this is true. And when you start talking about the dangers or endangering nuclear facilities, and when you start talking about nuclear, biological, chemical warfare in some capacity, even if you're talking about a meltdown at a nuclear facility, that's something that the international community is already clearly stated that they would be interested in intervening on those bounds. So, if the international community finds that this reporting and what is happening here, and that the reports of Russian troops in the nuclear compound being used as a base were true, there's a possibility of a military intervention. Wei Young says, jokes on Russia, though, because Ukraine has a PGM that they can use, but the accidents make it not worth shooting them there. Yeah, that's the thing. It just doesn't make it worth... Like, there's no good outcome. No matter what road you go down, it's bad. William Young says, it'll be slower, but they may have to encircle, then make/let them withdraw. Yeah, and that's not happening anytime soon. That's the issue. They would probably do it on the ground, but this is where the front lines are in general, and it's going to be a long time before Hadar actually is recaptured. Or has been liberated, I should say, rather, by Ukrainian troops. Xenoside says, I'd love to see NATO bring 100,000 troops into Zaporizhzhia. It would probably take a lot more than 100,000 troops, but that's the thing. You have several roads you can go down. I'm not saying a military intervention is likely. I'm just saying it's one of them. Because when you start talking atomic energy and atomic weapons and atomic anything, you throw nuclear into the sentence when it comes to geopolitics, it's not good, usually. Unless you're talking about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is what's going on right now. You start passing that word around to geopolitics, and people start getting very, very... it's not good, usually. And that's kind of where we're at now. Either Russia withdraws their troops because of public attention. It's a possibility. Ukraine encircles and recaptures Anahadar. Another possibility. There could be a international team of military forces at Anahadar that gets put in place there. That's a possibility. There could be a military intervention by Western powers in order to protect the safety of nuclear power plants. That's an option. There could be that Ukraine strikes the facility. That's an option. It could be that Russia doesn't withdraw its troops and Ukraine doesn't strike the facility. because of what could happen. And therefore, that's not good, because now that gives the Russians a free area to basically safely know that they're going to conduct operations out of, and they can continue to do so. They conduct military planning right there at the front lines in Anahadar, and continue to run a command center out of there, command and control structure that is essentially unable to be hit and unable to be destroyed, and is therefore safe. Those are several of probably a multitude of options. There's probably many more that could happen as a result of this. I don't know if political pressure will make a whole lot of difference. I don't think, but there's not really any good outcome. Military intervention leads to probably a larger war. The Russians continue to use it as a base, with it being safe doing so, means that, one, that's pressure on the nuclear workers there, additional pressure, and also the fact that that's bad militarily for Ukraine. Ukraine striking it possibly causes a nuclear meltdown, which would impact a lot of Europe. That's not good. The Russians could sabotage it and cause a nuclear meltdown. That's not good. Putting international troops there also poses a threat of nuclear escalation. The Russians are very unlikely that they're actually going to move out of there, and the Ukrainian forces are a long way off from actually encircling it, in which case, if there's a battle around the Anahadar nuclear facility, they could once again sabotage it and cause a wide-scale nuclear catastrophe, or the battle itself could damage the facility as well, especially since we know that Russia will use a lot of artillery. So there's not really a good outcome. You start putting nuclear weapons in, it's not a good outcome. We did see a Ukrainian strike on the plane a few weeks ago, but I don't know if they want to test their luck by trying it again. And that's coming from Riley. And yeah, that's pretty much where it's at. At what point, like how close do you want to play it? It's a game of chicken in some ways. It's a game of chicken. In other ways, it's what are the odds. If you ever played that game, that's not really a game I feel like playing when it comes to nuclear anything. And that's the dangers right now. Hopefully that kind of brings you up to speed on what's happening with Anahadar. I know there's been a lot of talk about it, but that's kind of what's happening. It's been a very confusing situation to try and read through, and I wanted to get a lot more information on what's happening. Ervis Shank says, are these active facilities? Well, my understanding is that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was actually shut down. Their reactors were shut down because they were ongoing under renovations, and that their fuel rods are not inserted into the reactors, causing a reaction right now. That doesn't mean that the nuclear facility is safe. All it takes is one wrong missile, or one wrong rocket, or one wrong strike, or somebody conducting some clandestine activities inside the power plant to change all of that. And there is still nuclear material at the site, which already makes it a danger and a hazard to the civilian population and most of Europe. Nuclear power plants aren't designed to withstand the destruction of warfare. They're meant to try and contain and safely operate a large, energy efficient nuclear reaction. And you don't have to look any further than Chernobyl to know what happens when that goes wrong under good conditions, let alone when it's under bad conditions like a war. I mean, just look at the Russians who got nuclear, they got radiation sickness and died because they decided to dig trenches up by Chernobyl. Chernobyl happened like 40-something years ago. Riley says, based off of information as of the 22nd of July, 2 out of 6 reactors are operating there in the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Jump down here to Crimea. for a little bit, and the first thing we have is a radar reflector barge is now currently moored alongside the Crimean Bridge. The Russians are becoming very increasingly worried that the Crimean Bridge is going to be a target. They have a ton of air defense systems that are located here, and they know that HIMARS are capable of at least putting a bridge out of action, if not totally collapsing it. So the Russians have decided that they're putting a radar reflector barge. They took a barge that was a targeting barge for training, and they mounted a bunch of radar reflectors on there, and so now any radar-guided munitions would be disoriented when incoming onto the bridge. And that's pretty much what we're seeing here. So that is the barge with all of its radar reflectors on it. And then we actually have a video from someone actually crossing the bridge. And so you can see it out there. JP Saronakov, I'm sorry for butchering your name again. I really suck at pronunciation. But JP says, international community should be flipping out over this. Yeah, it should be. And it is. It is flipping out over it. That's why it's being brought up at the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty Conference. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference, because when it comes to when you're talking about countries that have entered into big nuclear non-proliferation, big nuclear treaties, and then Russia pulls something like this, that's usually not a good sign regarding any other treaty nuclear-wise that they have signed into effect or signed with, whether that's as the Soviet Union or as Russia itself. Look, KSN regarding the barge says looks not very reliable. It's actually probably more reliable than you think. I just don't think it's going to help against the types of munitions being used by the Ukrainians. It's probably going to work against much older munition types. I just don't think that Russia understands. Russia's doing what they can. I don't think they're doing what's effective. I think they're doing whatever they have available to them to limit and minimize the possibility. And I don't think that there's not a whole lot. I don't think they have the technology really to or at least widespread enough to actually do it. Russia should be denucleared over this, says Aravis Chiang. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Do you know, to denuclearize somebody? Oh, man. That's got to be probably the best highly coordinated event in history. Largest military intervention in history. And would also be probably the largest special operations event in history. That would mean all-out war with Russia. And that would mean capturing their nuclear facilities before they could launch. And all it would take is one launch before MAD doctrine, or mutually assured destruction, is therefore put into action, in which case the whole world loses. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Nuclear weapons are there as a deterrent. And they're there to make sure everyone plays nice. Because Russia knows as soon as they use a nuclear weapon, that's game. And the United States knows that as long as if they use a nuclear weapon, that's game. And if anyone uses the nuclear weapon, it's game over for everybody. It doesn't matter who or why or what. It doesn't matter how justified or unjustified it is. It doesn't matter if it lands in an open field and doesn't kill a single person, or if it lands in the middle of a major city. If one country uses a nuclear weapon against another, that's game over. Nuclear weapons are the reason why we've had peace for 80 years. Because everyone knows that if you push the button, you lose too. And digging up all the nuclear material in the country. Yeah, pretty much. I am waiting for the B-21 Raider first flight. The B-21 Raider, I actually haven't taken a look at a whole lot of that yet. So that'll be something I'll have to look into. I know that they have the B-1 Lancer, which is a nuclear-capable bomber right now. I know that a lot of the fighter aircraft that we have fielded are supposedly capable of nuclear payloads. Orisk says the second you use one, it's not a deterrent anymore. It's bad for everyone. Yeah, nuclear weapons are using nuclear weapons is a war game you lose. You automatically lose the minute you launch a nuclear weapon. And if there's one thing people want to do more than kill each other, it's keep their power. Putin knows that if he launches a nuclear weapon at somebody, he doesn't have a country anymore to rule over, so it doesn't matter much to him. Same, you see that ideology even at lower levels too. When I was in Iraq back in 2020, we killed General al-Soleimani, who I was wonderfully able to bear witness to that strike while I was on post, because the Baghdad embassy is only about 5 miles from the Baghdad International Airport. So after we killed General al-Soleimani, what ends up happening is Iran raises the red flag of death, basically, is what they think it is. And they launch a bunch of missiles at Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq and at U.S. facilities in Erbil, Iraq. There was reports at Camp Taji while I was there, but it turns out that they were just flyovers and there was no strike on Taji at the time. And we were waiting for one to hit the U.S. Embassy. But where they hit an open area of the field near a U.S. facility. Caused no damage, caused no casualties. They hit an open, unoccupied part of the Al-Assad Air Base. Caused no serious casualties. It hit a bunch of unused barracking areas, and everyone had evacuated from the base before the missiles actually impacted the site. Because Iran Iran hasn't killed any Americans. They can report that they did, and they did do so. They said they killed like 300 Americans in the strikes. And so now Iran's population is happy. And Iran, who as much as they would like to kill Americans, and they train a lot of terrorists to do so, they themselves aren't killing Americans. Because now the United States isn't going to immediately launch an invasion of Iran and then wipe out their political and technically theological government entities and destroy the Ayatollah's power. Kaysen says must have been a stressed day. Stressed couple of days. It was a very stressful couple of days. I got there right after midnight. Right after midnight, they were actually celebrating. There was a bunch of fireworks and stuff while I was flying into the embassy on an Osprey. And there's actually some really cool ISR footage where you can actually see me getting off of one of the aircraft. You can see me and my Javelin teammate there coming off of one of the Ospreys as I landed at the embassy. Operation Paul Bunyan is the peak of show of force. I don't know if I know about Operation Paul Bunyan. I'm interested to see what that is. Please don't tell me you made that up, because if I go on searching for that on the internet, or if it's going to put me on, well, I'm probably already on a list. I look at Russian news channels, so be interesting. Anyway, moving back into the news, over here in Armyansk, this is here in right before you get into Kherson. So this is stuff en route from Crimea, or through Crimea, and into the Kherson Oblast. And what we see here is more equipment being shipped en route. What you have right there, that is as best as I can tell, is a BMD-1? Or not it's not BM, yeah, it's a BMD. But that is used heavily by the VDV, and it's being shipped into Ukraine right now to be used there at the front line. Oh, Operation Paul Bunyan is the Korean axe murderer incident. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I see. Oh, okay, I've heard of this. Oh, Operation Paul Bunyan is a fantastic story of going into the DMZ to cut down a tree. And the amount of military equipment that was used to protect the one guy cutting down a tree in the middle of the DMZ that was making a post lose sight of the opposite side of the DMZ is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Please go check it out. I did not know the official name of the incident. I just know that the incident happened. Yeah, basically, U.S. and South Korean forces, they had a post, and there was a tree obscuring their vision of the opposite side of the demilitarized zone across the 38th parallel. And so they went out and they brought in a ton of military equipment and troops, and they all went out into the DMZ, and this dude took a chainsaw and cut down a tree, and then they all left. As a show of force. If that's as far as wars went, I'd be okay. Actually, even less so. The Canadian, and I think it's the Denmark. The Canadian, Canada and Denmark having their whiskey war. That's also probably peak political diplomacy right there. Peak military action right there. Over here in Kherson, a collaborator's been poisoned. The appointed governor of the Kherson Oblast has been evacuated to Russia after he was suspected to have been poisoned. Yeah, so this is Vladimir Soldo, the governor of the Kherson Oblast under the military government inside of occupied Kherson. And apparently he's in a coma. Well, one less collaborator. Berezzunovac was shelled. Quote, Russian occupiers shelled the settlement of Berezzunovac in the Mykolaiv region on August the 6th. 5 people were injured. 1 senior citizen was killed. And that's coming from Hanna Zemazieva, who is the head of the Mykolaiv Regional Council. And it's a rather dangerous harvest as we have begun and are moving into the harvest season here in Ukraine and in many parts of the world for that fall harvest. It's a very dangerous time for Ukrainian farmers. Ukrainian farmer here has unfortunately hit a landmine which has destroyed his harvester. I do not know if this particular farmer is dead or alive at this point, or is wounded or not. I would suspect so. But it's really a steel harvest. It's a lot of landmines, a lot of booby traps, a lot of unexploded ordnance, a lot of shelling that's happening in these fields. Makes it incredibly dangerous to do your everyday tasks that you would do every year as a farmer in these open fields of the Donbass. You can take a look here. Yeah, that's not. And this is something that Ukraine is going to deal with for years. A UAV has been destroyed here in the Mykolaiv Oblast. The armed forces of Ukraine destroyed a Russian UAV in the Mykolaiv region on August 6th, and that's coming from the press service of the Operational Command South. We do have a photo of the Orlan drone, which has been shot down. Mykolaiv once again was bombarded by Russian forces. Quote, rocket attacks on the city of Mykolaiv on August 6th. 2 citizens were seriously injured. Local residential buildings were damaged. And that comes to the press service of the Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration. That's actually everything inside of Ukraine. But don't worry, we have plenty of stuff outside of Ukraine as well. And we actually start off here up in Moscow, where they're going to get help from North Korea? What? According to Russian state-run media news channels, they say that about 100,000 North Korean volunteers are ready to go to Ukraine to fight on the side of Russia. Quote, we should not be ashamed to accept the hand extended by Kim Jong-un. Yeah, you should be ashamed. You should be very ashamed. Check it out.
Теперь дальше по Донбассу. Вот появилась информация, что 100 тысяч северокорейских добровольцев готовы прибыть для участия в боевых действиях против...
Северокорейские добровольцы, Игорь Юрьевич, даже звучит как Оксимирон.
Знаете, может быть шутка, может быть нет, не знаю, но Северная Корея, по крайней мере, политически свою позицию обозначила. Более того, северокорейские строители готовы работать вместе с нашими по восстановлению разрушенных Украиной городов Донбасса, Херсонской, Запорожской и других областей, которые мы освобождаем и которые еще предстоит освободить.
Russian state-run media channels are probably the biggest joke I've ever seen in my life. I would actually believe North Korean news channels over the Russian news channels at this point, probably. It's bad. We actually have a lot of sources that are Russian. Russian State Duma, the Kremlin, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, RIA Novosti, TASS, we have RT, we have Rupli, we have all sorts of stuff. And it's just, man, is it just a bunch... all their news is state-run. All of it. They closed up shop on every single independent news channel. If there's someone from Russia watching it'd be fantastic, because YouTube is about the only thing that's not banned in Russia. I think Netflix falls into that too, and a documentary on the Ukraine war on Netflix would be fantastic in Russia. But it's all state-run, and so it's all the same thing being told by different news channels. It's the same wording to the extent that you could all play it side by side, and it'd be eerily almost exactly the same. It would just be different voices. It'd be like a chorus in a song. And it's about the only good stuff we get out of it is the Russian laws that are being passed, and we also get to see a lot of, well, the dumb stuff too. But we get to see a lot of stuff regarding, like, terrorist activities. They call them terrorist activities, partisans inside of Ukraine. But the Russian state-run media channels are just propaganda. That's all it is. And 100,000 volunteers, that helps the manpower aspect. I guarantee they're not volunteers if you're from North Korea. And even the Russians seem to make a joke about that. But even the fact that they're talking about it is concerning. Because they talk about a lot of things in Russian state-run media news channels, and they talk about a lot of stuff that has to deal with, like, escalating the war, mobilization, things really in preparation for the public. And they talk about banning VPNs because they know that if you have a VPN, you're basically bypassing the Russian media, which they don't want because that gives them less control. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. But not a whole lot of it's good. But maybe North Korea will give them 100,000 troops. Once again, 100,000 North Korean troops I don't think is going to do a whole lot. And about the only thing they would be is actually happy because they may actually be getting fed. It may be moldy, it may be rotting, but they would be getting fed. Turkey over here has activated a Russian payment system known as the Mir. And this is going to be helping Russian cash flow, and they're going to allow Russian tourists in Turkey. Erdogan announced this earlier, and the reason being is the fact that Turkey is kind of being the middleman right now. Turkey being part of NATO, this certainly doesn't make the EU or NATO very happy, but they are trying to maintain at least some kind of a relationship with Russia because they're trying to be the ones that broker the peace deal and save the world, essentially. I don't know how I feel about it. I have kind of mixed feelings personally on it, but it has so far proven into Turkey's favor, as they were able to broker the grain deal between Russia and Ukraine, which is going to save millions of lives throughout the world. So I can't blame them too much. It has worked in at least the world's favor up until this point. And that starts to bring us down here into the Middle East. And the first thing we have is here outside of Afrin. And the PKK members have attacked Turkish positions near Afrin today. This is in Anab, Syria, with the help of anti-tank guided missiles. And as a result of the incident, 4 soldiers of the Turkish armed forces were injured. No deaths have so far been reported. would not be surprised if they're using the TOW-2. It is heavily used by the Turkish troops down there, or not the Turkish, but the Kurdish forces. But Turkey did also retaliate. Turkish UAV ended up killing 3 Kurdish officials here, who after they destroyed their car over by Qamishli, which is here in the Hasaka province. And that car is totally destroyed. There is no... Oh, it's a bongo truck. That sucks. Yeah, when I was in Syria, we had bongo trucks all over the place. Down here, Israel and Palestine are once again essentially at war with each other. For all intents and purposes. It's not very good. So first of all, so far there's been 135 casualties confirmed up until this point. The residents of the Gaza Strip inspected the ruins of a residential building destroyed by Israeli airstrikes yesterday. At the moment, 15 civilians have been killed and 120 injured in IDF air raids. We saw the footage of that on yesterday's stream. They really laid into this apartment complex. The fighting does continue. This morning, the Israeli Air Force launched new airstrikes in the Gaza Strip. At the moment, as of the result of such strikes, 10 civilians have been killed, more than 70 additional ones have been injured. Also, during the night, there were raids by Israeli security forces on the west bank of the Jordan, during which there were clashes with the Palestinian militants.
لسه صبغة الصبغة عباد أحسن من الصبغة
Regarding the Ukrainian harvest, just one ship has managed to leave Ukraine in the 40-ish days since the harvest. Until the harvest, they would need to ship out 800 shipments to get it all out, all of it out. The deals look good, but it's nothing more than a drop in the ocean. If the 2021 harvest doesn't leave in 40 days, the new harvest has nowhere to be stored either. And that's coming from Kaysen. And yeah, that's 100% true. They have a lot of shipping that they need to do. They have been getting more out. It hasn't just been the actual ships. It's just the easiest way to get a lot of it out at the same time. A lot of it is being shipped across railways right now and being trucked out of Ukraine. So it has been getting out, but it is nothing more than a fraction. And about half of it isn't accessible at this point. In fact, not even the UN has been able to get into the occupied regions outside of the one time they got to the Azovstal and immediately had to turn around and go back to Zaporizhia. But here in Israel and Palestine, things are not good. The Palestinians are firing back. Palestinian groups continued to shell Israel, during which there were no casualties. They also threatened to carry out terrorist attacks in Israeli cities. You can see right here those rocket attacks, and you can see where there's flashes going on up in here. That's because the Iron Dome defense system is also activated at this point, and it's actually intercepting these missiles. The Iron Dome defense system is probably one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. It's very, very good at doing its job and intercepting rockets, missiles, and any projectiles fired through the air. It's very well calibrated, so very cool system, but it's really terrible to see what's happening here in Israel and Palestine. Over here in Basra, Basra is in the southern part of Iraq, and it sits right here on, I believe this is the Tigris. If my map will clear up. They call it the Aravand Rud. So I believe, yes, that is... Nope. Sorry, that's the Euphrates. Anyway. Here in Basra, the protests have started over water. And the reason why I was curious as to this waterway is the fact that... The fact is that Iraq is in a terrible drought. It's in an absolutely deplorable drought. And the local residents are demanding local drinking water be supplied to the houses. It's not salty and unsuitable for consumption, as well as something to be done about the salinization of the waters in the Shat al-Arab, where a large amount of seawater from the Persian Gulf is penetrating into here, displacing a weak influx of fresh water from the drying because of the heat of the Jijli and the Furat. So quite a lot. So basically, the waterway here, there's been a massive drought, and the water levels have lowered. But the influx of water from the Persian Gulf is replacing this fresh water with seawater. Meaning it's becoming very salty. It's not able to be consumed because so much water is pouring in from there's no flow into... It's not flowing into the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf is flowing into Iraq now. That's how little fresh water there is. And so that's the situation that we're starting to see now.
نعم نعم للبصرة 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 نعم نعم للبصرة
اي مالح يعني مالح مو الخاطر السماء وحق دم الحسين وشيعته وجده اللي ما عنده وطن كل شرف ما عنده خلنا نصير ايد بايد ولهذا البلد سده.
It's not the only issue in Basra. There's also not just problems with the water, but also with electricity, as doctors at the emergency hospital are using their mobile phone flashlights while treating patients.
يتوصل صوتنا اخوي هاي طوارئ مستشفى الجمهوري البصرة العام بتاريخ 6/8 كهرباء طافية وظل على اللايتات يا اخي والله ما يصير يعني على اللايتات تاريخ 6/8.
Needless to say, things in Basra are not good. Over here, outside of Kabul on the western side, there's a powerful explosion near the capital in Pul-e-Sokta, which is an area just west of Kabul, like I said. Powerful explosion occurred. The target was the Shiites who were celebrating 10 days of Muharram. According to the available information, IED exploded near the market, selling various things in honor of the Shiite holiday. At the moment, they claim 6 people are killed and 4 are injured, but the number may increase at this point. Local sources write the Taliban arrived at the scene of the explosion and began to collect bodies of the dead and wounded. Local residents report the explosion killed 12 people and injured 28, and their number could increase. While the list of 22 wounded who ended up in one of the hospitals in the capital was not published online, the Taliban have not yet officially commented on the incident. You can see the scene of the explosion right there. The Islamic State did claim responsibility for the IED attack aimed at the accumulation of Shiites and Taliban in the 6th district of Kabul. The Islamic statement referred to at least 30 dead and wounded, and according to sources, report 18 dead and 30 injured. Once again, there is the Islamic State statement taking credit for the attack. We jump all the way over into Taiwan, where it's essentially a blockade now. What they're doing is it's really a blockade of fire. Taiwan is canceling flights as China conducts military exercises. The blockade increased the risk of failure in flow of Taiwanese-made processor chips needed by the industry's global telecommunications and automotive companies. Hong Kong newspaper, the South China Morning Post, called the exercises an effective blockade of Taiwan. Against this background, China has extended military exercises from around Taiwan from from the end date of the 7th to the 15th of August. Now, why is it effectively a blockade? Well, the thing is that China has impact sites all around Taiwan, and that's where they're conducting their military exercises. What they're doing is they're using their artillery to essentially blockade Taiwan, because these impact danger zones where these rockets and missiles are impacting all around the island mean that ships and aircraft can't fly into or leave out of Taiwan. Jump down here into Cuba, and we see that a fire is raging at a fuel storage port. A massive oil-fed fire burned for the second day on Saturday, so today, near Cuba's supertanker port in Matanzas. On Friday evening, lightning struck one of the 8 storage tanks at the facility. Heat from the blaze reached the second tank on Saturday, and the wind blew flames dangerously close to a third. Mexico and Venezuela sent teams to help fight the inferno, and Cuba accepted a U.S. offer to unspecified technical advice. Cuban authorities said at least 121 people were injured in the second blaze, and 36 remain hospitalized, 5 in critical condition. One person was listed as dead, and 17 firefighters at this point are unaccounted for. More than 1,000 civilians have been evacuated from the area. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that. But if you would like more information on this, there is a full article on it from Reuters. But now we can get into some interesting developments that have happened throughout the world, and bring a little bit more of an uplifting note to the news, because there's a lot of depressing stuff. So we're just trying to find something cool or interesting or nice at the end of the day to try and be uplifting. Huh? So what's happening here is the fact that here in Houston, a team of scientists turned dead spiders into robots. Scientists have literally reanimated dead spiders to do their bidding. In a new field dubbed necrobotics, researchers converted the corpses of wolf spiders into grippers that can manipulate objects. All the teams had to do was stab a syringe to this dead spider's back, superglue it in place, and pushing fluids in and out of the cadaver made its legs clench open and shut. The idea was born from a simple question: why do spiders curl up when they die? The answer is spiders are like hydraulic machines. They control how much their legs extend by forcing blood into them. And so dead spiders no longer have that blood pressure, so its legs end up curling up. You can actually see that here. Riley is said to burn it with fire. I can't agree more. But if you want more information on this, you can go to sciencenews.org, which has an article on it, or you can go to the online library at wiley.com. And a fossil from a 30-foot prehistoric marine lizard has been unearthed. Stephen Cruz, an amateur dinosaur enthusiast, found fossilized bones belonging to a mosasaur, a 30-foot marine lizard that ruled the seas around 80 million years ago. Paleontologists from the Perot Museum of Nature and Science dug the fossils out of the creek's soft bed and soft clay-like rock, and excavated parts of the mosasaur's skull, lower jawbone, and several vertebrae from its spine. Imagine a 30-foot swimming pointy-nosed Komodo dragon with flippers and a forked tail, said Ron Tchaikovsky, who is the Perot Museum's director of paleontology and the curator of vertebrate paleontology. Most stories were like great white sharks or killer whales of prehistoric times. As top marine predators, they ate turtles, sharks, and even each other. Yeah. Yeah, if that was in the ocean, I probably wouldn't go in it. Nope. Nope. Not happening. There's already some free... I already don't think about the ocean too much because there's a lot of pretty bad stuff in it that I already don't want to just go like, nope. Like giant squids. Giant squids? Nope. You're not going to catch me. You're not going to catch me, you know, swimming in deep water. Nope, not happening. Giant squids live there. As well as a lot of other really creepy, terrifying things that live there. Riley says, I want to pet it. No, you don't. Those things eat each other. They hate stuff so much. Nuh-uh. Nope. They don't even like each other. They don't even like each other. Think about that. Sharks at least get along. With something. Even if it's only each other. Nope. Nope. Don't want to pet it. I don't want to pet it. Don't want to see it. I'm really glad it's extinct. I think 80 million years doesn't separate us enough. But with that, that's actually everything here, news-wise, in the world. There is a ton of stuff that's been happening. There is a lot of bad stuff that's happening. But luckily, we can help with a lot of this stuff because we're an awesome community. But it looks like there seems to have been another comment that came in. Reanimate that. No. Also, kill it with fire. Kill it with fire. Burn down the whole laboratory. The whole thing. All of it. Anyway, luckily when it comes to a lot of this terrible stuff, including reanimating long dead creatures that someone apparently wants here, we can help because we can actually help people's lives instead of trying to ruin them. As Kaysen apparently would love to do. The reason we can do that is because you guys have built an awesome community here, and that community allows us to continue to raise money for charities and fundraisers. We're never doing super chats. We're never doing any kind of merchandising. 100% of everything we do is for fundraising and charity purposes. And that's why we're doing this news stream every night, and everyone volunteers, you know, to put this stuff together. So please be sure, of course, to give a hand to the staff, but also to check out the video description and check out everything located in that description. There's a ton of different links for organizations down there, and please support them with as much as you can. We're trying to grow this to the point where we can actually do fundraisers on every single stream that we do. So if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, give us a like and subscribe, or give us a like and subscribe anyway. And let your friends know about us, because growing this thing means that more people will be coming here to watch this channel, and overall the more of an impact we as a community will have by raising more money to help more people throughout the world. And I can't think, with everything bad going on, I can't think of a better thing to do right now that everyone can pitch in to help with. So thank you very much for supporting us in this endeavor. Thank you very much for supporting those organizations where this is really all that it's about. And I hope that you guys enjoy and find this stream knowledgeable, maybe even funny at some moments. But I hope that you guys are at least getting well informed by this. So thank you so much. I hope that you, your family, and your friends remain safe. And if not, I hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. And I hope that you guys enjoy a wonderful Saturday. I hope it's peaceful for you. I hope that you guys end up being able to relax and enjoy yourselves before we really get in and starting on the week. So with that, my name is Paul from the New News. Have a wonderful rest of your guys' night.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. І стоять до волновахи, і чудно кличе діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуємо. То для них Відстрія до волноваги, чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює пресуйте. Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Відстрія до волноваги, чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює пресуйте. Going home, Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Відстрія до волноваги, чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює пресуйте. Ідіть нахуй.